Your mind is like a puppy, and if you don't train it, it's gonna shit everywhere.
I am obsessed with that. I'm gonna get that tattooed. Maya is a mental fitness expert.
I get told so often I go to the gym for my mental health. I'm like, it's just not enough. We've actually got to spend a bit more time understanding actually what strengthens the brain. How you think is gonna absolutely influence how you feel will influence how you act will literally influence your personality.
If you are mentally fit, you can control your emotions, reach things without getting burnout. We're gonna go on to listener questions. How long does it take to build actual confidence?
So I get this a lot.
How do you stick to an improved mindset?
When you feel slight exhaustion or stress or anxiety, try this out. Just close your eyes for me. Isn't that the weirdest thing, right?
That is crazy. What is up and welcome to Working Hard, Hardly Working. This is an episode that I have actually been excited for quite a long time. I knew I wanted it to go live as part of our New Year content and our series on how to have the best 2025 possible. Maya is a mental fitness expert. She has been on a mission to make training your mind as common as training your body. At just 15, Maya was diagnosed with an incurable illness that turned her world upside down. And it was actually through visualization and mental training that she found the strength to rebuild, a journey that inspired her decade of work in helping others strength train their minds. Maya has taught and coached some of the world's biggest brands and most successful individuals in the art of visualization. So I was so excited that we managed to get her in the office to give us a little free coaching session on mental fitness techniques. But I also thought, because we are doing this mini kind of New Year 2025 series, there's the planning part of things, and there is this kind of, what am I going to do in 2025? What are my goals? The manifesting side that we've ticked off. But then there's also, okay, how do you get there if you don't actually have adequate mental fitness? And I really wanted to talk about and learn more about exactly how we build that. As you know, if you've been here for a while, you know that I do not identify as woo-woo. And there are a lot of things that I just kind of immediately click off because I just think, do you know what? This isn't the type of thing that works for me. And actually what I really wanted from this is, because we all know we all have mental health that we need to look after, and therefore we want to keep our brain happy and healthy, and we want to keep our mind happy and healthy. But at the same time, naturally, a lot of things around mental fitness have just been classically things that I haven't paid attention to. And so I wanted this to be a bit of an episode that was kind of helping us to learn what works for each of us individually when it comes to building our own mental fitness, so that we can actually start to reach our goals that we set for ourselves without burning ourselves out along the way, or without losing control of our emotions or what we really want and all of this. So this was such a good episode. I found it really, really, really useful, with lots of practical techniques as well to employ when things get a bit overwhelming, or even just every day when you're trying to reframe who you are as a person and really trying to grow into a certain type of person that maybe doesn't have certain habits or doesn't fall into certain negative cycles. And I found it really, really useful. And we also answered a lot of your questions in this episode. We did a little Q&A section, and those were some of my absolute favorites. I asked those on my Instagram broadcast channel, which is what I've been using to get questions for the podcast. So if you want to be involved in setting questions for guests, then make sure to join that broadcast channel. That's just on my Instagram page. Then you can just click to join the broadcast channel. But before we get into the episode, if you could just hit that subscribe button or hit the like button, or do both, why not? Push the boat out if you like to hear interesting conversations with interesting people about interesting things, so that we can all help improve our own lives. That would be really greatly appreciated, and it helps the podcast a huge amount. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, I'm really excited.
I'm very excited to have this conversation. This is obviously part of our beginning of 2025 little mini series all around improving your life, setting yourself up well for the next year. And we're talking about a lot of different sides of that, because I think it's really easy to look at New Year, New Me in one facet. You'll come into the new year and you'll be like, this is my fitness year, or this is my financial year, or this is whatever it might be. And our lives are so much more complex than that. So I'm excited to be talking about mental fitness and building mindset and making sure that whatever 25, the year 25, AD 25, whatever 2025 is going to throw at us, that we're actually able to deal with that, even if it's not what we had in mind. So first of all, I'd like to ask whether at the moment you are more working hard or hardly working.
I'm hardly working at the moment.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
Yeah. I think for me, I'm a very seasonal person, even in my work. So I've just had a very intense harvest. So very a lot of producing, a lot of events, a lot of, speaking, etc. So now I'm in hibernation. Now I'm just a bit more introverted. I'm still doing work, but more deep work, but not so much of the like outcome producing. So yeah, I am hardly working at the moment.
Oh,
and
I
love
really
it.
like that. I'm a big fan of that. And I think that it's very classic for people to think that they need to work at the same output all the time. And it always needs to be 100% and it always needs to be this, otherwise you're not going in the right direction or whatever. And I actually think understanding life and our years in seasons and everything is a really good way to look at that, so that you're not kind of constantly feeling like you always have to be 100 miles per hour. I always start by asking guests a little bit about their early life so that we can get a little bit of context on you and who you are and the position that you are coming from when you're talking about these things. I know you've talked about how your life changed a lot when you were around age 15. Could you talk to me a little bit about that?
Yeah. So funny when you were talking about like the, always being on, that's definitely who I was when I was younger. I thrived under pressure. I thought being busy kind of meant successful as well. And, I'm South Asian. So from a very young age, that always achieving and my worth being tied to, A stars or being the best in class, it was just wired into me. And then I was also in a very sporty family. So I played badminton for my county, my country. So, that's also a very competitive environment, but I loved it. I did really like it. And my prospects for taking that very far was great. And then, at about 15, I basically just was developing some symptoms that in my stomach, just constipation, hurting a bit, kind of normal, might have been a stomach bug. And then when I went to the doctor, I was diagnosed with something called ulcerative colitis, which, it's quite a common disease, actually. It's an inflammatory bowel disease. But the hard thing about it is there's no cure. And so, being quite young, faced with that type of ultimatum is tough, but I had a pretty positive mindset. I was like, cool, let's deal with it. And as time went on, just things got worse and worse and worse. And I sometimes struggle to like try and explain what it's like living with a disease like that. So, all I can really do is, let's say it's like a day in my life when I'm in like a flare, which is, when you're pretty ill. There was no night or day. I didn't know when I was sleeping, when I was awake. I was going to the loo maybe, like 30 times a day. And it's pure like blood. There's just no relief. And then when you have a tiny bit of relief, you then just fear it happening again. And, you get put on steroids. You try every possible thing, whether it's diets, whether it's, I remember like once I even went through this like fecal transplant thing, which was illegal in the UK. But you're so desperate. You want to try anything, right? Just on like 60 tablets every day. But at the same time, I was going to school. I remember I used to go in with these like adult nappies on and just pretend like nothing was happening. Because there's so much shame around, I don't know, I think as a woman and a young girl, like, talking about going to the loo or like stomach pain, like no one really does it, right? Everyone's always just like, oh, I'm under the weather. They don't say what's going on. And so I just had to hide that for so many years of my life. And so look, like it's obviously a very long story short, but this was happening for most of my teenage years, for maybe like 5 to 6 years, just in and out of hospital the whole time. And I guess that just breaks you as a person. Mentally, I went from a very confident person with so much like light for life. I had that fire, I had that like ambition and just aliveness. You'd walk into a room and people were like, wow, like she's super bubbly. That just all went, all of it. I had nothing behind my eyes. I guess was surviving or existing or trying not to really. And then I think this is where I really discovered the power of the mind, not through just like one moment. I think there was a combination of different people I'd met or different practices I had done. But really the most, I guess, transformative one was just when I was in hospital and this nurse, she was like, oh, like, where would you be if you weren't here? And basically I had just gone into uni, which was super exciting, but I couldn't go because I was just really unwell. I was like 38 kilograms at the age of about 18.
God.
Yeah, so like physically there was just no possibility. And when she said this question to me, I just was like, that is so insensitive. Like, how rude. Like, I've been here for so many weeks now and that's what you're going to ask me. So I told her to leave. But I kind of pondered on the question because, well, where would I be? And for so long, I used that question as like a, oh my God, I hate everyone else because they get to do all these things and I don't. And I was stuck here. So I guess I used that opportunity to close my eyes and I just saw myself walking again. That was it. There was anything big. I just wanted to see like, what does like a healthy Maya look like? Seeing myself smile, seeing myself back at home with my dog. It was tiny things, but it showed me that what if something else could be possible? And then I basically left hospital. I trained with neuroscientists, athletes, psychologists. I went on courses. I read every book under the sun. And for me, visualization has been a thing that has really helped me through this whole process. And really strengthening the mind, the body, but also like changing the relationship with myself and the disease, which meant that, you know, I did get better. I got to go to uni. And I continued to practice the things that were working. And for me, that was the mind.
And when you think about that time and you think about how the role visualization played, it is a really profound thing to say that was the thing that got you out of hospital and that was what like made the difference for you. Do you, like, if you could... This is genuinely just asking from like an interest point of view. Like if you could pinpoint how much of you getting better you felt like was really, you know, breakthroughs or certain things that you were kind of having in hospital versus you being able to be in the right mindset and visualizing that improvement and visualizing yourself out of hospital and all of that. I'm really interested in it because I fully believe that mindset impacts a lot. And at the same time, your body was against you. So, you know, that's tough to deal with as well. But I'd be really interested to hear about that from your point of view.
Yeah, I think, you know, sometimes when I say my story, I think it can seem like that one thing changed everything. And I'd be naive to say that, visualization was the thing that did it. But, you know, truthfully, there's so many things that are going to have a role to play. My diet, my lifestyle, even just like not hanging out with certain people, all those things also make a difference. I think, you know, I agree with you that if we just take a step back and think, like, when it comes to being human and getting through something, the mind is capable of so much. And because the mind often controls what the body wants to do as well, like if we can start to influence how your mind is thinking, then actually like you're giving yourself the best chance to do it. And I think there's so many ways to do it. You know, I've heard people who use laughter or meditation, and there's not like a one size fits all. I think partly I enjoyed the visualization and I was feeling changes and differences. But also, I guess I learned a lot. Like, you know, when I first started doing it, people would be like to me, Maya, just be positive. Like, you know, yes, you've got this disease, but just be positive in life. And I just didn't get that. I just was like, what's there to be positive about? Don't force me to feel grateful when actually I'm not. I can't eat, I can't walk. Why would I be grateful? And so it wasn't really about having just positive thoughts. It was like, how can I have a more positive relationship with my mind so that it wasn't like this weapon that was like destructing me, which it was doing initially. Instead, it became this like tool that could help me. Here's how I'm going to frame it. I don't think we can like, you know, factually say that a positive mindset is going to get you to where you are. But what I can say is a negative mindset will definitely not get you to where you want to go.
I completely agree with that. And I will also say that, like, as someone who, my family's very like no nonsense and very much like quite far from talking about things like mindset and all of that. And I think that I've had that so deeply ingrained. And actually my first experience of like truly terrible mental health was I only picked up on it at the point where I started having physical reactions in my body. Like I had a full anaphylactic shock. Everything swelled up completely to the point that I couldn't like bend my fingers. Like, you know, I had rashes everywhere, all of this. And there was nothing. It was just the mental state I was in. And I was like, the fact that it's taken me to get to that point of seeing physical things to actually take it seriously, I think does reflect on how much we deprioritize a lot of our mental state. It is actually really interesting because that's something I've had to definitely unlearn. One of the things you've said is that from a lot of your research, you've noticed really the difference between mental health and mental fitness. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about the difference in those two things.
Well, I guess if you've got a mind, you've got a mental health. I always compare it to the body. So like, we all talk about our physical health. Is it good or bad? It's pretty like black and white. It's like on a scale. But you're only physically fit if you're, let's say, going to the gym, maybe doing Pilates, maybe doing like a HIIT workout or like dancing, whatever it might be. But then if we ask ourselves, what do we do to stay mentally fit? No one really knows. Like we don't actively or proactively spend time actually training the brain, but we do that for our body. And it's not a fault of our own. If I look to, and I'm sure you're the same, at school we go to PE class, right? That is compulsory. But mental fitness was never really a thing. Physical fitness, yeah, we all did it. Netball might have been like, I don't know, the parachute game. You did it from such a young age, but there was nothing for the mind. And so the reason I like mental fitness, and I think it's actually helpful to pioneer this new narrative around training the mind, is because I think we're a little bit stuck talking about mental health. Like I meet people and the first thing they'll say is like, yeah, I've got anxiety. And my thing is like, okay, but like, what are you doing about it? But it stops there. There's very little like empowering ideas of, no, I want to take control of it. And I think mental fitness reminds us that not only are our minds dynamic and they do require exercise, but I think it's like the sexiest thing we can do for ourselves. When you're like mentally fit, that is so attractive. Like looks fade, but if you are someone who can manage your emotions, can you like go for your goals and not burn out in the process? Are you able to set boundaries? Like that is so attractive, but that requires work. None of us are just born with that. And so I think the more I use the term mental fitness, I think it's more action orientated and people like, they have energy to it rather than like, this is my mental health. So I think that's a really key difference.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because I think that people can be so averse to taking in different approaches to, people were averse to talking about anything to do with mental health until a few years ago, but taking in different approaches towards mental health and what you talk about as mental fitness, because it still feels within this bucket of kind of, things that we either don't talk about or don't believe to be big enough issues, when actually we know that we know that suicide rates are, really, really terrible. We know that people, are struggling with mental health kind of diagnoses more than ever. And actually, all of the things you said about like, actually all of those things, if you are mentally fit, you can control your emotions, you can reach things without getting burnout because you know how to deal with your boundaries and all of this. Everyone would agree with all of that. Like everything out of that is things that I would absolutely want to be able to do. Yeah. And yet I spend a lot of time in the gym trying to be physically fit, and actually the difference is that I don't think I prioritize that in a way, because I see prioritizing that probably subconsciously. I'm subconsciously probably like, actually no, I don't need to spend time on that because I'm fine. And actually all of those things that you say are things that I want to be able to achieve and are things that I don't have complete control over now.
It's also about getting better. Like I love meeting people who are doing great and they just want to be even better. And actually, if you look at like the best athletes in the world, they prioritize their mental fitness because they're like, I know I'm great, but I just want to be like even better, even if it's 1%. And I think it's also worth mentioning that, you've got mental health, which is the state of your mind. You've got mental fitness, which is the active maintenance of good mental health. You've also got mental illness. Now, that is actually not my expertise. I'm not a mental health professional. So that is when you get a diagnosis and you may need to go to a doctor or, go on medication, fine. Then you've got mental weakness. And mental weakness is where I go through that, where some days you're a bit more tired. And so, you may just feel a bit sadder and your mind is just maybe not as sharp, and that's okay. But when you're mentally weak, you have the tools from mental fitness to bring yourself back to mental health.
Right.
And something a lot of people don't like when I say this, I get told so often, yeah, Maya, I go to the gym for my mental health. I'm like, it's just not enough. Like, it's like, yes, it helps. Don't get me wrong. I think going to the gym is so good. And of course we feel better. But your mind is half your health. It's half of it. So we've actually got to spend a bit more time understanding actually what strengthens the brain. Right. How can we rewire it in a different way? And I think combining the two is where you really get this edge in life.
Yeah, so it can be a tool to help, but it is not the only thing you should be doing.
Exactly.
In order to keep mentally fit. So let's talk about that then. What would you say the pillars are of mental fitness?
So I think mental fitness is a huge term, right? You can go anywhere and everywhere with it. So when I started doing my work, I think the thing that really helped me was just to compare it to physical fitness. I think we all get it. So I was like, let's mirror it. So first and foremost, and I'm sure you'll agree, consistency. Like no one gets abs or muscle overnight. You've got to work at it. You've got to do the reps. It's the same with your mind. You know, if you do, let's say, one visualization or one bit of breath work, like once a month, it might change your day, but it's not going to give you that sustainable long-term mental health or fitness. So consistency is number one. And that can just be 2 minutes a day. I'm not asking you to do an hour. It's just 2 minutes. That's it. Then we have diet. You know, like we all know with physical fitness, if you're going to the gym, but maybe you're eating like McDonald's every day or fried chicken every day, you're not going to feel amazing. In the same way, your mental diet is, what do you watch? Who do you speak to? Are you just gossiping all the time? Are you complaining? Are you watching things that make you compare yourself? We've got to be careful what we feed our mind. Feed it with the good stuff. And that includes your self-talk. It includes things like that. Then you've got cardio. Cardio is as simple as if you don't use it, you'll just lose it. So engaging the brain, whether that's debates, quizzes, reading, things like that. Then we've got our rest. You know, you have rest days in physical fitness, same with your brain. Do you give it the time to just switch off, whether that's going into nature, connecting, might be sleep, meditation, and then strength training, which is really where you're building the muscle. You are making it better, you're making it stronger. And that's where things like visualization, learning new things, that rewiring process is really key.
And I know you talk about how the strength training of our brain gets harder after 25. Why is that?
I think it's just like, if you think about when you're young, you know, you haven't like been in the world very long. So your brain it's so open to learning. It's so malleable. So like different things people say, that's how your brain starts to learn how to navigate the world. As you get older, because we've repeated this so much, then it gets pretty permanent. You know, by the age of 25, you kind of know what you like, dislike, your values. You've been probably living with your family or parents. You've been at school for so long. So these thoughts and beliefs are pretty wired in there. And the more permanent something is, the harder it's going to be to change. I kind of see it as like, it's like a road you drive on. If you drive on that road every single day, you know, yes, if you, let's say, go to another road, you've got to keep going on that one, which is why as we're older, we've got a lot more permanent roads in our brain. So we just need a bit more, I kind of call it aggressive mental training to actually change it. It's not just like a quick thing. And so I think, yeah, as we get older, just because they're more wired in there.
So let's talk about, obviously we're doing this as part of a series on 2025 and going into your best 2025. Let's talk about a kind of routine that if you were talking to someone now being like, this is how you're going to, keep up your mental fitness and make sure that you are actually building your mental fitness over this year, what routine would you suggest to put in place? Because I completely, I think lots of people will really hear what you're saying. And then it's like, okay, how do I actually do that? How do I get that into my life? Because my life's already quite busy and, I want to be able to act on this.
I'm not going to just sit here and be like, right, this is the perfect routine, because I think everyone's brains are a bit different. We're all coming at different stages. So I think what I'm about to say, I think take what maybe will resonate most. So one thing that despite anything that kind of happens in life, and life obviously does happen, the one thing that we can really invest in and control is our character, like really working on who do I want to be? And a lot of people might think, yeah, but how's that my mental fitness? But who you are is the way you think, feel, and perform. So if you can start to take a bit more ownership of that and actually intentionally say, right, every morning I'm going to close my eyes. And I do this, by the way, every day. I close my eyes and I just see, okay, like, Maya, how do you want to walk into a room today? What's the energy you want to bring? How are you going to be braver? How are you going to be just 1% more confident? And so really developing my character through visualization before I do it, because otherwise we just act on autopilot, right? So that's super important. And I think, in terms of actually integrating in that to your routine, 3-4 minutes a day. That's it. When you wake up, before you get changed, brush your teeth, you do your dental, hygiene, you do your physical, do a bit of mental. And just even if you're laying in bed, I don't mind, but just close the eyes and really see yourself and connect to it. Like, get excited to be that person in the world. And that's going to help you that despite everything that's going on, whether it's work, family, friends, I'm building trust in my character. And that is fundamental.
And how does that differ from something like meditating in the morning?
So meditation it's a more passive mental process where you're calming down, like the road analogy. It's like you're calming down the traffic, you're slowing down the thoughts, you are creating a bit of calm. Visualization or mental rehearsal, it's where you're using your thoughts for a more deliberate outcome. So I'm not asking you to just be super peaceful. I'm asking you to create new images, ideas, so that the more you do that, you can start actually becoming that person. So there's a deliberate outcome, and you may feel inspired, you may feel excited, you may feel peaceful. That's great, because there are many different types of visualization. But if I was going to say where to start, I'd really start with that, especially 2025. We can take control and ownership of that part.
And so if you were to describe visualization to someone who's never heard it before, what is it? And also, how does it even work? I know you talk about how it changes your subconscious so that you can work towards certain things and so that you can work towards being a certain way. Could you just explain that a little bit, especially for anyone who's listening to this being like, I have heard the word visualization and I'm going to assume I'm going to hate it.
Yeah, I get this a lot. People hear visualization, either they'll be like, oh, no, I don't manifest, this is not for me. So visualization at its core is where you are mentally rehearsing images, environments, feelings in your mind before they've happened. The thing is, it's not something new that I'm bringing to the world, right? It's been there for centuries. And actually, if you look at or listen to the top athletes, take Ronaldo, Serena Williams, Michael Phelps, when you listen to how did they build that champion mindset, they all say, I would visualize my race. I would visualize myself going on court. Even the other day, I saw this video of Venus Williams just being like, before every match, I would visualize my process, how I wanted to play. If I was losing, what would I do then? And all of them do it. It's a common denominator. Yet it's never really trickled down to any of us. And the reason it's so powerful is because as complex and incredible as our brains are, they basically really struggle to know if something is real or imagined. Now, this is where some people are like, oh, okay, cool. So if I just think about 10 million pounds, I just get it. And I'm like, no, that's not the point. We'd never say Michael Phelps manifested 26 golden medals. We'd never say that. And so seeing it as a neurological training technique is key. And there are 5 types. You've got outcome, which is for goals, results-based. Process, which is basically to make a process like public speaking, or it might be a sport, better. Creative, which is really good for managing emotions, injury, disease. Negative, which is where you're seeing the worst case scenarios, but you're seeing yourself overcome them, which is great for performance and motivation. And then lastly, explorative, which is what the likes of Nikola Tesla, Einstein, what they use to basically create new ideas and problem solve. So in fact, let's just do a 30-second thing just to kind of show that science of the brain, because it's really interesting when you can experience it. So this isn't specifically mental fitness, but we can do that. But just close your eyes for me.
Okay.
And I just want you to imagine that you are in your kitchen and you walk over to the fridge, you open the fridge, and inside there's half a lemon. So it's just sitting there, it's very bright, and just hold it in your hand so you can feel it's quite cold, got a tough yellow skin. And I want you to just now start smelling it. So smell the lemon, it's very fragrant, it's a bit sour. You can already smell it's quite citrusy. Now taking this lemon, I want you to start squeezing the juice of it, drop by drop, into your mouth. I want you to feel it when it lands on your tongue. It's so sour, it's so cold. Even some might squirt in your eye, and just really start squeezing all of that lemon. It's so tangy, and your saliva might be going a bit weird. Your cheeks maybe have that like weird fuzzy feeling. Keep going, squeeze it all in your mouth, all of it until it's empty. Okay, and open your eyes for me.
There's so much lemon in my mouth.
Isn't that the weirdest thing, right? It's so weird. Like, I just do that like 30-second thing to just show you, like, you're obviously not holding a lemon.
Yeah.
But yet the mind, because it doesn't know if it's imaginary or not, your body reacts, you think it is. And because you've obviously eaten a lemon in your life before, that road is like, the neurons are like, hello. And it's fascinating, right?
Yeah, it's so interesting. Say when I was first online on social media and I was like terrified that people would say, you're too like this or you're too like this or whatever. Even thinking that had happened or like would happen gives you the same feeling as if it has. Yeah. And it's like, it's the same as the kind of sayings like, so there's a few. So first of all, worry is worshipping the problem. Worrying is praying for what you don't want, which I think is very true. Like you experience something twice because you worry about it, and then you also experience it when it happens, if it happens. Worry is carrying tomorrow's load with today's strength, which I think is a really good one, because it's so true. Like, you make yourself experience these things twice a lot of the time, and you really have to talk yourself out of these cycles that you get into, because I have it the whole time. I'll be like, oh, well, what if this happens, and then this happens, and then, a lot of things go wrong at work. Classic having a business. And I'm constantly like, oh, well, then if this is delayed, then this is going to happen. And I have the actual visceral experience of it as if it's already happened. And then it's like, well, how am I expected to go about the rest of my day when I've just ruined my own day by something that didn't even happen?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us do that. And it's, if you can believe that that's the case, then you can also believe the benefit of visualizing the opposite.
Yeah, and I think most, honestly, like, I think people are already very good at visualization. We just do it in the wrong way. Like, I remember someone was like to me, oh, I don't get why, when I go on stage and I do public speaking or like in a meeting, why I panic so much. And really, it's because before she even did it, she would literally mentally rehearse that happening, because it happened once. And once it happened once, that is literally the experience she would repeat again and again. And we all do it, whether it's like, I don't know, someone rejecting you, or you asking someone on a date and they say no. That's what we replay. But you've got to ask yourself, like, okay, what if this goes wrong? What if I fail? But what if actually you learn something? What if it goes better than you thought? And if you allow your mind to see that, then imagine how you enter that situation. You'll be a bit more confident. You will be a bit more open. You might be more resilient as well. But if we go in with that, like, okay, I've just seen like 10 times now, this is all going to go wrong. Cool. How you think is going to absolutely influence how you feel. How you feel will influence how you act. How you act will literally influence your personality. So it just goes round and round.
Well, I think that's a really good point, because I think that I was going to ask you about the difference between this and overthinking, because I can imagine that someone who overthinks a lot of different scenarios or whatever their day is, and they've got a big presentation or whatever, and they overthink what's going to happen, or what happens if it goes right, what happens if it goes wrong, and all of this. And I was going to ask you the difference between that and overthinking, but I guess what I'm getting from you is that it is a way of thinking, but it is using your overthinking positively. So it is like, so you might overthink this, going, this is going to be bad, this is going to be bad, subconsciously talking yourself into over and over how bad or nerve-wracking or whatever it might be this is going to be, whereas actually this is instead using that energy that you put into your brain to think about this a lot, instead to think about how great it's going to go.
Yeah, and I think this, it brings up the fact that not all visualizations do the same thing, right? Like, if I'm doing a creative visualization for managing anxiety, that's not really to do with your overthinking. It's a completely different technique. But there's two things I'm actually going to say to this. One, overthinking, like nearly 99% of the time, is underfeeling. If you catch yourself overthinking about something, someone, you are not letting yourself feel something. So ask yourself, what am I avoiding feeling? Because your brain, from just one emotion, can have like 1,000 thoughts. And it likes to distract us from actually feeling maybe something a bit uncomfortable, like fear. And instead it will be like, what if, right? So always ask yourself, what am I under feeling? And two, It's exactly that. We're making a more productive relationship with our thoughts. And I think the worst thing to an overthinker is to be like, just try and calm the mind down. Like that's like the worst thing to say to them. But instead, learn how to use your brain, be on its side. And I think like through my research of like, when I really go dive deep into like champion mindsets, the thing I notice is that they become like best friends with their brain. It's not to say that sometimes it's the relationship is hard, but like, you know, they learn to allow their mind to be on their side. Whereas so many of us, we're like, oh, for goodness sake, I'm thinking bad about myself again, or I'm judging myself. We're so kind of mean to it. Whereas actually, if we can become friends with it and learn, just like any relationship, the language of it, imagine what could be possible.
Yeah, no, I think that is a really, really good point. And I think that it's so exhausting overthinking and going around in circles. And also it's exhausting kind of times two, because you're annoyed about the fact that you're overthinking, and then you're annoyed about the fact that you let yourself overthink. And then it's kind of like, and you're annoyed about the thing that you were thinking about in the first place. And actually, you're so right that we can be so hard on ourselves and actually end up overthinking about the fact that we're overthinking and all of this. And it really does go around in circles, and you start to think, oh, I'm not a good person because I have these mental traits, or because I do this and it's a natural habit of mine, rather than like, okay, let's rebuild this.
There's this amazing like parable in like, I think it's like Buddhist scriptures. And it's this idea that when we experience something like overthinking, or maybe something bad happens, we get sad, it's like an arrow like hits us in our arm. And that's like the pain. Fine. All humans experience that. But the point of this story is that they were saying that what we're very good at is continuously putting a second arrow in the first point of pain. So that's when we judge ourselves for being sad. We think we're a bad person because perhaps we felt a little bit weak here, or things like that. And then they explain that actually that's the suffering bit. That's what keeps that mentality there longer. And the point is actually, we don't have control over the first arrow. That's human. But we do have more control over the second one. So can you maybe ask yourself, how can I catch that second one and maybe replace it with something else, or just let it go? But I really love this idea of kind of like visualizing that idea of, why am I being so mean to myself? Like, it's okay if I'm overthinking. How can I maybe slow my mind a bit down or use it in a different way? And so I love this idea of catch the second arrow, let the first one do what it needs to do, but catch the second one.
Yeah, I really, really like that. We're going to go on to listener questions. I asked in my Instagram broadcast channel, which is the place I get all information ever about anyone who listens to anything I do, exactly what questions they would like answered by you, and when talking about mental fitness, and when talking about how do we actually go into 2025 with the right mindset we need to actually succeed. So we're going to go through them.
Nice.
A few dilemmas in here, a few little, you'll see.
Okay.
So the first one is, I work in a high stress job and find it so hard to control my emotions when I'm exhausted. What would you recommend?
Are we allowed to do another visualization?
Yeah, absolutely. Get me visualizing.
90 seconds. So this is, okay, so but just with some context, emotions are energy in motion, right? A lot of us try and think them away. We try and like drink them away, eat them away. It's just energy. It's energy in motion. And have you seen Inside Out?
Yes.
Okay, so that's basically what we're going to do, but with visualization. We're going to make your emotion like a character or an object or a shape, and then using your mind, we'll slowly let it dissolve. So in this process, you're feeling it and healing it. In fact, this is so funny. I was in university maybe 5 years ago, and for some reason in my like girl group, we shared this one post. I'm pretty sure it must have been from either Tala or Shreddy, one of them, being like, feel it to heal it. And genuinely, like, that has become such a big part of what creative visualization does as well. You'll see it. Yeah, I know, 5 years ago. Okay, so to this person, when you feel slight exhaustion or stress or anxiety, try this out. So close your eyes. And let's first start by just taking a big deep breath, breathing in, and a big exhale out. Okay. Now, I just want you to think about a situation recently, or maybe it's coming up, that perhaps causes a little bit of discomfort. So it might be a bit anxious, it might be overwhelm, maybe there's just some tension in your body. And you can even think about if it's a person, anything. And just allow it to come to the present and notice where in your body do you feel it? Is it in your head? Is it in your chest? Maybe it's in your gut. Now, instead of running away from this or trying to suppress it, we're going to make this feeling tangible for the brain. So I want you to give it a color or maybe a shape. Maybe it's like an animal or a character. Be as creative as you want. I sometimes have like a red fire, or maybe it's like a icy blue ball. Maybe it's like a lion, whatever it is. Just see that in your body. And because emotions are energy in motion, we're just going to let it actually release energy. So let it get tighter, let it get hotter, let it get fiercer, whatever it needs to do. You're like totally safe here. Your mind is in control. So really just feel the emotion, sit with it, be with it. And yes, it can be a bit uncomfortable, but just feel it. And now using your mind, slowly, I want you to let it get smaller and smaller and smaller. Whether you need to pour water on it, you need to kick it away, just start letting it dissolve till it's now the size of a tiny, tiny pea. It is so small. And taking one more deep breath, breathing in. As you exhale, let it completely dissolve now. Create space, calmness, and relief from that emotion. And you can open your eyes.
Wow. I really enjoyed that. Would you like a job as reading me bedtime stories?
It's the best thing about like emotions, creative visualization. I'm such an emotional person. I feel things so deeply. I'm very sensitive and I always suppress them. And I think that's also part of the reason the disease even came. But you just need 90 seconds with something like this to feel it and release it, even if it's just like 10% more. And that's where like people always ask me, like, how do I do it? And that's partly the reason I even was like, okay, I need to write a book or start scripting these, because it means that people can actually take it and do it for themselves.
Yeah.
So whenever you feel that, I sometimes do this on the tube. Like, it's such a great way to just feel it and release. And you do just feel a bit more lighter and calmer. So then you can be a bit more rational with how you want to go forward.
Yeah, I really, really love that. It's so interesting because I actually had a really positive experience with hypnotherapy.
Yeah.
Which I don't need to say this so many times, but like, I can't tell you how completely other side of the spectrum I grew up and kind of have always thought. And actually, it's so interesting because the way they talk about hypnotherapy is the fact that, you know, if your amygdala in your brain, which is the part that holds trauma, I believe, was like this, then if you like some of your sides are up like this, and when one of them is triggered, it basically makes them all go up like this. And the way it was explained to me was that, sorry for people listening on audio, I'm making funny hand signals. You can open Spotify if you're on Spotify and it will show you. But basically what happens is that through hypnotherapy, you're able to basically just like make these stand down a bit. And it's so interesting because the way it worked actually was we talked through various different bits of like whether trauma or just like bad memories or whatever it might be, to actually like lower those things. And throughout the experience of hypnotherapy, it uses a lot of visualization.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting because there were certain things where before that point, I couldn't even talk about certain things without like crying or like, you know, physically getting upset. And actually, since that, it's not that things, you know, don't affect me, but it's actually crazy how many of those things after that point I'd actually be able to just like talk about and just be able to talk about like without that emotion attached to it. And you could see the way that it's actually made it go like that. And actually that was so interesting to me because I was like, God, way to take a skeptic and be like, no, this is how your brain works and you just need to get some of those spiky bits back down.
That's it. And I think like the body always remembers, right? And it's like the more historical your trauma or that memory is, the more hysterical your emotions will be, right? That's why we get triggered by things. But I think you raised the really important point, which is that you've got to experience it. It's like us being like, running is so good for you, but then you never go for a run. And it's also the case that it might not be for you, and that's okay. But try it. Just try it and see if it can help.
Yeah. No, I really like that. The next one is, how long does it take to build actual confidence? I feel like I've been trying for ages and not making progress.
Ooh, confidence. So the first thing I'd say is, are you trying to build confidence or self-confidence? Self-confidence is where you can walk into any room and you can just trust yourself. You can be the quietest one there, but you like yourself, you know yourself. Confidence is when you might be getting a bit more external validation, like, wow, you did this so well, and things like that. So make sure that the focus is on building self-confidence more than anything. 2, it's obviously a skill. Now, I still practice confidence because I lost it. Well, I used to have it, then I lost it, and that was really scary. Building it back up, it's a process, but it's something that you have to build and then maintain. Because if you're in a new situation, or perhaps you feel a bit hurt, of course your confidence is going to get knocked. Like today, I faced like a massive rejection in the morning, and like I could tell, like, whether it was my confidence, my worth, obviously it goes a bit down. But you have to ask yourself, you have to kind of like, it's like a bank. You have to deposit all those things that you know about yourself that you can genuinely say, yes, I trust this about my character, and remember that, and then build up from there. So if you've been trying to be confident for a long time, make sure you're defining it for you, not someone else, because I think confidence is actually super quiet. I think it's so quiet. Can be very loud, but real self-confidence is quite quiet. I don't know if you've tried visualization for that, but I definitely did character visualization for this. Like, even my background on my phone is like a version of me that, it's not me, but it's called the Batman effect. It's where you see yourself as like a character, and by seeing that every day and being like, okay, shoulders back, how does she walk into a room? And I just did this maybe 4 minutes a day, that's it. And with time, you start telling your brain, this is how I want to feel, this is how I want to act. And I just go step by step. But everyone can build confidence. Like that I am so certain of, no matter where you are. Remember, it's a skill, and think of it as little votes you're going to take for yourself. So your self-image, your self-talk, and then your performance. Those are the 3 things that are going to contribute to your confidence. So if you can start with that confident self-image, visualize that. Self-talk, this is like the best thing I've ever done. Michael Phelps used to say that whenever he walked through a door, he'd just say one thing about himself that made him feel good. And think about how many doors you walk under every day. I just love it. I think it's such a simple thing you can do today to just help you remember who you are. And then lastly, your performance. I think that's probably the last thing that will change, but that's how you can kind of hack that cycle.
Oh, I really like that. How do you stick to an improved mindset without falling back into your old routines?
You do fall back. You fall back because it's familiar. It's safe. And I don't think it is plain sailing. When I first wrote my book and I gave it to my sister to read, she was like, this just doesn't look accurate. And I kind of agreed, because I missed out the part that was like, when you are on this journey, there are going to be so many moments. You do have the doubts, you do have the fears, you do go back to like your old ways. And yes, obviously I train in mental fitness and I do it and I teach others, but mental fitness isn't having perfect everything. It's just being able to manage it and be dynamic with it. And so what I would say is, yes, you will, I won't call it fall back. I'd say maybe it's like step to the side, you know, and it's just familiar, it's safe. So it's very human to do. But just ask yourself, do I want to stay here? Is there a bigger risk of me staying here and just having the same as everything has been? Or what's the risk in me maybe just going back to where I was? And the more you do that, you can then level up. But nothing changes if nothing changes. So you've got to have the courage to keep remembering, this is who I want to be.
Yeah.
You've got to keep remembering that.
I really love that. So the next one is, I tend to look at things I've already done to validate myself being unproductive or procrastinating. How do I stop that?
So from the question, I think, I hope this doesn't come across harsh. This is what my interpretation is. There seems to be a misalignment with like internal motivation and purpose. I think like, yes, you can use your past and experience to, you know, remember and give you confidence and competence, that's great. But as humans, naturally, we like to progress, and that's an important part of that. So I think ask yourself, well, why are you procrastinating? Like, what are you trying to avoid here? A lot of people are actually quite afraid of success. They're afraid of their potential and what could happen. But I think life's too short not to just try. So as much as looking back is useful, I think start to create what you want to do going forward. Who do you want to be? And, you know, what are some of the things that make you feel alive? And that's going to help you overcome this thing of being stuck in this little bit of a rut where it just feels like there's maybe a lack of inspiration or internal motivation to do something.
No, I think that's a really good response. And I also think that, like, you know, at different points within your own life, whether you, like, sometimes you do just need to look at things you've already done and be like, do you know what? I can sit, like, I should sit back for a bit and I should relax. It's obviously this person has noticed this as part of a cycle whereby they co-sign not working towards future things by being like, I've done something before. And it's like, if you were seeing someone else doing that, you'd be like, yeah, great, absolutely. And you can go on forever with that being the best thing you've ever done. You absolutely can. And that's a choice, and you can decide that that's, you know, and that's very valid as well. But if you also want anything else on top of that, and you're continuously looking back at what you've already done and seeing that as a way to stop being productive or to stop moving in the direction you want to, then you're wasting your own time.
Yeah, and you've literally raised the point I'm super passionate about, which is like, you don't have to want to like be the best or perform like the best. Like, you don't have to do that. Some people just want to feel content. And I think it comes back to asking yourself, like, when I'm trying to improve myself, what does that really mean? At one point, improving myself was, learning how to walk again. Now it might be building a global company, but you've got to ask yourself, like, what do I want? And definitely take the time to go back and celebrate what you've done. That's huge. And I don't think enough people do that, especially high performers. We're always on to the next thing. But it's just getting really clear of like, how do I want to show up in this world? And then align those actions to that.
Last question. And I think this one is a really, really good one because I think this can be a real obstacle. How would you go about aligning your new mindset with your partner?
That's a really good question. I guess I can only answer this from kind of like personal experience, but also what I've observed. When you are on this journey of like you growing and, you know, changing, naturally the people in your life, you know, they're not doing the same thing. So it can feel a bit weird. It's like you're in this middle page bit where you're not the person you used to be. You're not the person you are or want to be just yet. And I think one, communicate, like share it with them. I think it's such an amazing journey to share with someone. And even if that doesn't mean you have to go into the details, just telling them like, I'm learning this about myself. And like a really big thing, tell them how you need support. That's really important because some people want to just do it on their own. Some people actually want to share. Some people need someone to just be like, look, keep going. Like, I'm noticing this in you. They want affirmation. So really actually communicate, what do I need from you? Because that's important. And then the other thing that I think I'd say is in relationships, I think I love this idea of co-elevating together where naturally you grow, someone else grows, and so it helps the relationship grow. And I think if you can go on that journey with someone, it's also amazing, but I think you have to do it individually too to really build the strength in yourself. So when it comes to aligning that new mindset, first you're going to have to get to know it, right? It's like a new thing. You're going to have to get to know who that is, what that means, and then just communicate. That's all that can really be done is communicate, show, create some empathy, a safe space for it. But I think it's an amazing thing. And if they maybe question it or perhaps it feels like there's like resistance there, I think you should be a little bit selfish. And if this is what you need to heal or to grow, that is what you have to do because there's no point us settling or dampening who we really want to be for someone else.
I totally agree. And I think that although it's terrifying, there is no doubt that especially in your 20s, I would say, a big reason for relationship breakdown is like quote unquote outgrowing each other and or like growing in different directions or whatever it might be. And it's so true because we do all grow at different rates and some people really want to be content with exactly what they have at that moment and aren't like I want to work for this, I want to work for this, I want to work for this. And some people realize they are that type of person, and that is really, don't get me wrong, I don't think it's impossible, but that is hard to be
so hard
aligned with. I think you don't necessarily need to want the exact same career or the exact same specific goals, but I do think you need somewhat similar mindsets. And I think it both happens with friends and relationships. You can very quickly realize when you think you're outgrowing someone or something, and it is natural too. Yeah. And I think, you know, we've actually had our first episode back for the first one out of this January series. We were talking about the fact that actually, you know, we do talk about a lot how the 5 people you surround yourself most with are basically who you become. Like, you become a combination of those 5 people, and sometimes, you know, that happens. People grow at different paces, and sometimes that doesn't work out. And I think that's actually one of the most justifiable reasons for something not working out is, do you know what? Like, we want to build different lives, and we are building different lives, and we have different mindsets. And I know that I couldn't, for example, like, be in my relationship now without feeling like we were a genuine team because of how much of my life revolves around like where I want to get to and all of this. And I think I would infuriate anyone who wasn't in that type of mindset, because it would just be so annoying to them. They'd just be like, sit the fuck down. Yeah. So I think that it, you know, it goes both ways, and actually finding out what your right match is in terms of that. And you can elevate so much quicker as well by having people around you who you want to be more like. I think that's one of the biggest hacks for moving in the right direction.
Yeah. I mean, scientifically, it's your mirror neurons, right? Like, when you are surrounding yourself with people like that, you tend to act like them or be like that. And that's just your brain kind of reflecting exactly the same thing. It's like a sponge. But one thing I also would say is growth is so messy. It's so messy. People do it at different times, ways, etc. So the other thing I'd say is sometimes we think that we won't share with someone the growth until it's like finished. But actually, even if it's just telling your partner, hey, look, like, I'm kind of like exploring this, like doing all of this. I don't really know what the answer is. I feel like I'm a bit confused and it's a bit overwhelming for me. I just wanted to tell you that. You don't have to have the answer to be like, hey, I'm now this person. You know, it can just be, I'm also a bit stuck. I'm trying to do this. I'm doing my best. I just wanted to tell you. I just need you to just be by my side. And it's okay to admit that it's messy. Like, this year, I have lost so many people in my life, partly because, yes, naturally you grow out, and partly because things happen. And it's just been like, I've also had to remember that as much as it feels like there's been this like shedding, fine, it's now time to grow. And you know, the scariest thing was, it's going to sound really, I don't know, I just don't laugh at the same things anymore. And it was really scary. I was like, why am I not laughing with my friends how I normally do? Why do I not love sitting in the pub getting drunk? And it was just like, bit by bit, you're like, okay, I know I'm changing, but I didn't realize this was also part of it. And that can feel very lonely. Yeah. But it's part of the process. Yeah. So you're opening for new things to kind of come in.
No, I really, really like that. And I think that's very aligned with a lot of the discussions we've been having on this podcast. And I think, you know, it can be uncomfortable. And as you say, growth is messy, but it's worth it. And likely you're going to, you know, you'll realize that over time, but it can be hard. I've had big points in my life. I've just been like, okay, have I just lost half of my friends? Like, have I, like, looking back, I'm like, you know, it wasn't a quick thing, but like, has that actually just happened? And actually, it's never not been for the better, despite the fact that was the worst grammar I've ever used. Yeah. To finish, I'd love to know what the best piece of advice is that you've ever been given.
Feel it to heal it.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I might give 2. One that I think helps me in the realm of mental fitness is as simple as your mind is like a puppy, and if you don't train it, it's going to shit everywhere. Like, simple as. It will shit on your relationships, your career, everything. Like, it does.
I am obsessed with that. I'm going to get that tattooed. If you see that tattooed across my forehead, you know where it came from.
Love it. I think, but it's so true. And actually, it kind of makes this journey more fun. It does. It does. It's like if you've got a dog, just watch your dog. Like, you've got to train it. Same with the mind. The other piece of advice, I think, well, for me, this year's been a lot about letting go. So it's going to be a bit like, I guess, aligned with that. Just this thing of like, once you've let go, like, let go again. This is what my teacher told me, because we can hold on to a lot of things, and letting go is just a constant process. So keep letting go and keep training the puppy, which is literally your brain.
I really like that. Oh, well, thank you so much for coming on. I feel like that was the perfect episode to recalibrate. And, we've been doing a lot of talking about reaching goals. I think that we can all agree that reaching goals is a lot harder and probably even impossible without being in the right mental state, and doing that by improving, mental fitness. So, yeah, and I think that puppy quote is the best thing I've ever heard in my life.
Love it. You can call the episode that.
Yeah, exactly. No, thank you so much.
Thank you. I've had an amazing time. Thank you.